Hey y'all, what's up? So this is the Merp team, and we wanted to have a conversation around pop culture and marijuana and the different things that that entails. So my name is Simone Varnado, she, her, hers. I am the founder and CEO of Merp.
Kyra Horton, CEO and Head of Equity Partnerships and Community Outreach, she, her, hers.
I'm Anetta, she, her, hers, and I am the Head of Consumer Engagement.
I'm Jordan, she, her, hers, and I am Head of Market Research and Development.
So yeah, let's just get to it. So we wanted to have this conversation because there's so much stigmatization around cannabis and cannabis use and who uses it. But we also, in our team, recognize that the kind of the start of that stigmatization and stigma around cannabis started actually with pop culture and music in some ways. And so I think Anetta, you had some things you want to say about that.
This was really intertwined with the whole jazz movement of the 30s, and it was really well known as one example that Louis Armstrong was a big user, if you will, and the U.S. government was keen on the Anslinger used jazz to use cannabis.
Racialized cannabis use and cannabis as a product.
Yes. And so basically there's this movement where a lot of rich, powerful white people started calling jazz satanic music, and that very quickly turned into the outlaw of cannabis in 1937. And right around that time as well, a movie came out, which is a really famous anti-propaganda or anti-weed propaganda film called Reefer Madness, which depicts this couple, quote unquote, living in sin because they're selling marijuana to their neighbors and the community. The story leads to the murder of an innocent woman by one of the people who are dealing weed. The dealer then pins it on the dead woman's boyfriend, who is then driven mad by his cannabis use and goes on a killing spree. And the film finishes with this ominous warning of tell your children that weed is bad, basically. And that was a huge catalyst to a wider community, American community, dislike and hatred of cannabis. So yeah, that's kind of where it all starts. But in the 60s, you kind of see this turn on its head with a more taking cannabis from this ominous evil thing to making weed users stupid. That very stereotypical stoner character. I know Cheech and Chong was a really famous movie and characters around that time, and that we see that extend even to now, with Pineapple Express and that 70s show and things like that. And even outside of film, the music carries through, and in the 60s you see not only reggae really come through, but you also have a lot of rock stars using it, like the Beatles, Bob Dylan, but not just it touches all genres. Willie Nelson was really famous for using cannabis as well. Obviously, in later years, you have hip hop becoming a massive, and also in the 90s, alongside hip hop, you have the Grateful Dead, which is a whole other side. What do you guys think?
So first of all, sorry, reefer. Reefer, that word to me is just I'm big on words. So y'all know I'm say what you say and mean what you say. And so reefer is just such a weird terminology for cannabis. I feel like reefer is such a dated and a term that's used among certain generation. I call cannabis, I'll say weed, I'll say marijuana. I mean, I might even say Mary Jane, but I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say reefer. So the reefer whole thing, I when you said that, my brain was like reefer, reefer, that whole thing. But I think also it's just really interesting that how strongly racism was to the point where you can take this and be able to use it as a weapon against certain communities. So that's my initial thoughts on that. But I'll let Kyra give her feedback.
Yeah, I will come at it from not a cannabis user, but in this case, a musician, as I've played the violin and the viola for about 12 to 13 years and have like been a nerd in it, have been like 3 orchestras at one time. And I find it interesting that the beginning of it was tied to jazz and demonization of mostly black women, black men in the jazz industry. And I find it interesting how we go from it being in jazz to now being someone who's, stupid, lazy. I say that because as a musician, like jazz is very tough to play. And I also, the reason why also it's mainly for black people is because jazz has the kind of beating, the syncopations that you have for it. It's something kind of like innate to like the rhythm of the person. And so for me personally, being more classically trained for a violin, I've even, played jazz on the violin, and it's not that easy. So I think it's interesting how you were in this industry that really was, about passion, about true talent. And then all of a sudden, because you couldn't kill the music, like you couldn't kill Billie Holiday's music, you couldn't kill Neil Armstrong, like you couldn't contain that. So now you change the face of it not being these talent musicians who had just have like this innate passion, this drive, and again, like just this artistry that can bring everyone, because we know white women were going after black jazz musicians, and that's a big reason why it started like that. And now it transitions from these people who can hold power in that way, as in leading a nation through music, to now there's no real drive or potential for the cannabis user. I think there's like a very interesting, like someone said, like the language of like who the cannabis user is changes. And I think there's a very poignant reason why. It's because like music had power, and that music still has power, but at that time it was like a really big turning point for America, and jazz was leading it, and black people in jazz were leading it.
I actually just wanted to add too, I believe the term marijuana was coined with racial intent to criminalize the word. So that's why I also nowadays, now that I actually learned that, I try and just stay away from the word marijuana. I just tend to stick to weed, cannabis, flower. I like that's kind of a new term that people are coming into terms now with flower, and that's a nice innocent term used in a dispensary setting. So, but yeah, as a daughter of a jazz musician, I could totally agree that the shift has changed with it. And my dad, who played jazz for 35 years in Kansas City, in Missouri, to Chicago, much later than the 30s. But yeah, I would just say that stigma still kind of sticks. It still has sticked well into the 2000s and the 2010s. I do see the total connect of like in the 30s about how it completely flipped on itself, and now it's a target for black and brown people who are using it with no consequence. Now it's targeted towards them, and it still kind of is.
Yeah, one thing I noticed, because Jordan, you work in a dispensary, and you said they encourage you to wear flower, and so it's kind of, I won't go too far into this because we're talking about pop culture, but once again, I'm person about language. Flower, I talk about the gentrification of cannabis, and how flower, just that term, because nobody, I've met too many black folks who are saying flower. They'll say they'll say we very frequently, but flower, I feel like that's the way to also, people asked me a while ago, Samo, how do we destigmatize, deracialize cannabis? But I think the word flower, maybe they are trying to market it as them destigmatizing and racializing it, but to me, it's trying to make them palatable to white people. And so, because once again, the negative association of marijuana and cannabis in those words, I think brings a lot of negative that still, to maybe some white audience is frightening. It still makes them uncomfortable. So saying flowers are pleasant, they're nice, and it's ambiguous. So you can say that in public and no one will be like, if you say flower, it's like, oh, do you mean tulips, daisies? Like, but unless you're in that community, you know what flower means. So I think it's interesting that what you're working at, like, that is something you are doing. I think that I do believe some of you are doing that to deracialize the language and to destigmatize it. But I think from a corporate white point of view, I have a hard time seeing it as not a way for them to exactly make it so it's more palatable for people to intake to consume this product and say, oh, it's just flour, and it sounds pretty. But I won't get too much in that. But I want to notice that about pop culture and Bob Dylan and different groups who are white who were using cannabis. And so my understanding of cannabis and like the history of cannabis, it came through basically all countries of color. So like it's interesting that I think I knew that some like rock and roll, like the Beatles, that kind of thing, used cannabis. However, it was not part of their persona. When you look at Bob Marley, when you look at Snoop Dogg, and maybe, I mean, I wouldn't say Louis Armstrong is known for using cannabis, but I think that more recently, with a lot of like Black people who use cannabis, that is something they're known for, like Rihanna, like Snoop Dogg, like like all these people who use cannabis who are Black in recent history. That is attached to who they are and what they do. That is not done to white people unless they purposely make it so like Seth Rogen and Martha Stewart, who now both have lines of cannabis products. So I think that is like my first thought about hearing about white people who white musicians who are using it. And obviously, like, I'm a big believer that like I also played an instrument. I played trombone, tuba, baritone. I'm a low brass gal in the march band. That's where I was at. But I do believe that cannabis does help to like unlock certain parts of our brains as far as creativity, to be able to make this music. Because most people you mentioned are like household names. Like we know these people are. Like I don't listen to the Beatles, I don't listen to Bob Dylan, but I know who he is. So like it's just like these are all things that are very interesting to me. We know who Louis Armstrong is because the music touched us. They were able to, and I think they were able to make that artistry because of partially or a majority do with cannabis, and that is just my point of view.
Yeah, just to give background for folks who might not know, as Simone mentioned, cannabis, as far as we can tell, cannabis came into the U.S. at least through Mexican immigrants and as well through the Caribbean and folks moving in from the Caribbean. And from the Caribbean, it came from Asia and India. So that's kind of the roots of those origins of cannabis in the U.S. And I also think it's like really interesting how the messaging from like that 1930s era, the language they use in Reefer Madness, the association with jazz are like very similar messages that get carried through into the 60s and 70s when you see the war on drugs get like re-amplified. It's like the Reefer Madness is like so similar to, I feel like, what Nancy Reagan would say about like just say no, things like that, like that like story that people would tell you of that you like in the 60s you turned into, oh, you're ruining your potential by using cannabis. And then like you said, Woodstock is an extremely famous, like everyone smoked at Woodstock. It was a massive festival, but like you were saying, Simone, like those white artists don't get that association even to this day, like by most people. So I think, yeah, that's a really great point.
I want to make it a point that Black people in the Caribbean did not move here; they were enslaved and brought here. So just want to make that a point, just because that's important to me. That it was not voluntary; they did not just it got brought in via these Black slave people who were enslaved into the states. So I just want to put that out there. But go ahead, Kyra.
My mom came here, but that's later on in the 90s, not during the time we were talking about. And even now, still some people are brought here on H1 slave contracts, basically to work on plantations for sugar and stuff. So yes, when we're talking about music, because I think that that's what we're centralizing, is the fact that white artists are allowed to have their artistry and allowed for it to be eccentric. When it comes to Black artists, it's kind of like the cannabis is what makes them eccentric. The cannabis is what makes them relatable. It's not just them as a person and the kind of music that they want to create. And maybe the cannabis is just a part of their journey. And I find that very interesting. Like David Bowie, he can be able to fully and freely express himself and experiment with himself. And we don't think that something is a tool that he's using to get to it, and we need it, which I also find interesting because I think we talk about also destigmatizing and I'm not a user, but I want to be able to destigmatize for people who want to be users, or even for my grandma, to finally be able to be comfortable using CBD ointments on her arthritis, and just kind of the picture that white America paints for us when it comes to our artists and how they use and why they use cannabis filters in this one mindset of well, I'm going to use cannabis because of this, and doesn't really allow people to again experiment and explore on their own, because the artists themselves don't get to. Their kind of narration with that drug is created for them, and maybe you're able to be a Snoop Dogg and parlay that to other ventures, but a lot of people aren't.
I mean, that even goes in the day we just witnessed, 420, that. I mean, I feel like I've seen people call that Snoop Dogg Day or something, and it's just that it was kind of formed kind of before, he was making music, and it was kind of like a secret code. And I don't know, to associate that with Snoop Dogg, I mean, he's great and all, but I mean, I don't think he needs to be associated with something that, yes, he is associated with weed, but I mean, I don't think we need to make bridge that gap. And I just feel like with Black artists, that it just always needs to be bridged. You know, there always needs to be like, oh, well, yeah, it's just, yeah, exactly what Kyra said, really, exactly what you said. But yeah, I just feel like, you know, they don't get the same benefit of the doubt, because, you know, like all those white bands in the 60s, they were doing a lot more heavier stuff. So the fact that they aren't even associated with cannabis at all is quite interesting.
I just had one thought about the Reefer Mania, and like the first thing I thought of was Dare. Like, I don't know, the first thing I thought of was like a drug abuse resist education, like that program that's in school still to this day. And just like how that program, I think in a lot of ways failed, like at his goal. And maybe I'm mistaken on his goal, but you know, what it was told to me is the goal of that. And I think Dare, I mentioned that, you know, because obviously it's not pop culture, but it's something that most people our age know what that is, because it was in our schools. And Dare was created out of, I'm guessing, the Reefer Mania and the connection through that. I will put money on that is a connection to this. And so like, it's just interesting. Like when you first did that, I was like, oh, this sounds kind of like Dare, like trying to like, you know, scare tactics to make sure we don't use these products, but not speaking to the reasons people use the products, or the circumstances around that they cause them or drive them to want to use these products. Or as Jordan said, and as Kyra said, why a lot of Black artists or artists in general use these products, because it helps to tap them into different, you know, planes of their brain. So that just is my whole thought of just like Reefer Mania, and it just came back to me as far as Dare, and like I have a whole bone to pick with Dare, but you know, I'll stop there.
I believe everybody who went through that Dare program in school made fun of it or did not believe in it. So I could say for a fact, for every kid in my school, total failure.
Yeah, 100% agree. Dare was a total failure. I just wanted to go back to the folks who associate like Snoop Dogg with 420, and in the research I was doing to prepare for, you know, this talk, I actually found some articles that said that the Grateful Dead is actually like part of making or popularizing 420, or at least that was a message that they used, like especially in their heyday. Which I don't know a lot. Like, I don't listen to the Grateful Dead. I don't really know a lot about them, but they're a white band and they are palatable to a lot of white people, especially like, you know, some high-nosed New England folks. Like, I know a lot of people from Boston College who went to Grateful Dead shows with their parents. And I just think, you know, like you all have been bringing up, there's such a dichotomy. Like, white folks are fine with the Grateful Dead, but white folks, you know, turn their nose up at Snoop Dogg. And they're both of them have like the same associations with cannabis, but it's just one is forgotten conveniently. So that seems to be a massive theme. Even with Willie Nelson, that's another older icon who's super closely associated with cannabis, and plenty of old white folks still find him to be palatable, like good character. So I think that's interesting.
No devil's lettuce there, but like associations there with that, with these audiences and crowds. But I think one thing I think about too is that we do a lot of, and Netta, you do a lot of this. Netta's our like DJ at Merp, like, you know, she works at radio, and so she does a lot about music. But what a lot of what we do is we create playlists so people can, like, you know, intake and cannabis intake. So whether that be CBD oils, a tincture spray, an edible, whether you want to hit the bong, like whatever it may be, we've created, or just chilling out. Even if you aren't smoking anything, you're just chilling with friends, you want to have a playlist of music too, and then let's create it. Go check it out on Spotify or in our link tree on Instagram. But I mentioned that only to mention that, you know, people, the reason why a lot of, like you mentioned, Woodstock, and there was camps all there, is because campus is not only good for the or beneficial to the artist creating music, but to the listener as well. They're able to unlock certain parts and appreciate the notes, the artistry. And if you are an artist and you are smoking and you're in a live performance, first of all, your anxiety is usually lowered, so you're able to like truly like burst free and full of your performance, of your artistry, of the artist who you are to your audience. And as an audience, you're able to engage and feel that energy. And not to get into energies or auras, but like, you know what I mean? Like you when you're at these concerts, like a concert, we go to concerts because it is like a vibe. It's an energy in that audience. That's why we go to concerts. We can stay at home and listen to Spotify, but concerts have that energy. And so I think that not just the artist uses the product, but also the users as well are able to like appreciate music to a whole new level when they intake some of these products.
Absolutely. Every show I've been to, absolutely. That's, I mean, and I don't like, and I'm not a big going into the crowds, but man, I do miss festivals. But yeah, there's always a collective, like, good energy. Like, there's a lot of positivity surrounded by shows. And I always feel like all the, all the Black artists I've gone to see, I've had, I mean, I don't want to sound this way, but there's just been a better vibe there. When I went to go see A Tribe Called Quest, that was an amazing show. It was after Fife Dog, R.I.P. It was like the first show without him, and I cried. It was so emotional, but I won't get too into it. But yeah, I completely agree. There's a total vibe with music shows. That's why we go, and that's why we've been missing them in this dang panorama.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about now we're transitioning to like the vibe of it and how cannabis can aid in that. I say from the nerdy perspective of being an orchestra, is just kind of like, I know my dad, one time he saw me perform, he's like, you guys look so serious and everything, but truly it's like, it's almost like an out-of-body experience, and that's being sober because you are playing together and you're like, you have your leader and you're all kind of swaying to the music together, and on the beat you can just like feel the rhythm in you. And I don't really know why we want to like demonize anything that kind of aids in that process of like human connection. Like, I feel connected with the person that's like on the other side playing a cello, and I'm like first or second violin, the back or the front, because we are together experiencing this moment, also creating this moment for other people. When you are the musician, you are creating a moment for someone, and then when you are in the audience, you are like showing appreciation for that creation. And I think it's a two-way street. And I think also it's just kind of like, why are we stripping away this like essential part of music when it comes to like, experimenting with each other and experimenting like with who we are, whether that's gender expression, the kind of genre you want to mix with. I think that has also been stripping for Black artists, because like you see kind of like rap is always kind of one way, Black female artists are like trying to figure out, how do we do pop? Are we always going to be R&B? I think that's the same thing with cannabis, of like cannabis has always been stigmatized as like one kind of cannabis user, especially for Black and brown people. With white people, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be the skater boy, but you could be anything you want to be. But if you are Black or brown, you are kind of like a one note cannabis user.
I had a question. So like, I just had one question for you all. Like, who is your favorite like artist who you all know has used cannabis, and what do you think their contribution has been to the pop culture or the larger culture? Oh, I have two, but so mine are SZA and Rihanna, but I'll stick to Rihanna, because I think that she is starting to reach her legacy phase. I listened to a whole podcast by Ricky T and Denzel Zion about how how at a certain age you're too young to have a legacy phase, and like it was a whole thing. Listen to that podcast. You say what we say. I love it. But my favorite is Rihanna. Rihanna, she smokes. She has never. She's from the Caribbean. She's from the Barbados, and she's never made it a hit that she uses cannabis. Has never been a shy point. But it's interesting. I feel like that is, people know that about her. But when we say 420, like, we do not. Well, I don't automatically think Rihanna. So somehow she's managed to curate this persona, this whole army, like the Navy, Rihanna Navy behind her, that follows her. And we all know she smokes, but Rihanna is like, she's sexy. She's an entrepreneur. She's a businesswoman. And I think it's so, I really would like to I have to sit with that for myself, to like how she managed to create this brand around her and this persona that includes cannabis in a very normal way, but it's still, taken seriously. Like, she's taking, no one thinks Rihanna, as far as I know, Rihanna is nobody's joke. She's no one's fool. So I think that like that for me is a person who like has contributed. We all know like Rihanna with the hairstyle she wears, especially for Black women. Rihanna wears a hairstyle, boom. That is like Beyonce too, with the lemonade braids. Like when people like Rihanna and Beyonce do certain hairstyles or certain trends of fashion, people follow their lead. And I think that even people in her audience who are her followers, I'm sure it's a good amount of people who like Rihanna who don't smoke marijuana, but who are probably chill with it, because Rihanna, she's a chill person. She does what she does her, and she's one of the fewer Black people now who are in Black spaces, who are Black creators on a large scale, whose cannabis use is known and who is not it's not a focal point of their identity. So that's just interesting for me, and that's why I feel like she's a person who I like, and who I feel like that's what her contribution to the larger pop culture is that she's Black. She's very, very Black, but she says what she says, and she is shamelessly that way. And I can't speak to what aspects of that have to do with her identity I think I'm frozen, or has to do with colorism. But I think that overall, to me, she's a Black woman, and she's still doing her, and she contributes so much to society and to like the larger culture, and she is a cannabis smoker. So that's my person.
Also, her iconic 2012 moment at Coachella where she was rolling on her bodyguard's like head. Iconic. Love it.
Yes, Rihanna, she is a queen, literally. She is a queen. But I mean, if I didn't choose her, I would choose Missy Elliott because as an older millennial, she's been through it with me, And she's another one who she's not making it real known, but it's just kind of implied, from the early 90s to now. And then she just took her little hiatus, did what she wanted to, came back, did a concert in California a couple years ago that I didn't get to see. My friends did. But yeah, and just from what they say, I just think she's just a total badass. She's just a total, like, a true woman boss, not toxic, non-toxic. Like, she just gets better with age. Like, I don't know. What else can I say about Missy Elliott? She's an amazing performer, an amazing rapper, a beautiful lyricist, a great collaborator. Her and Timbaland, just listen to the album Super Duper Fly and thank me later. But yeah, Missy Elliott, my queen forever. And Rihanna.
We love the female love. I'm going to switch, so I'm going to say mine to Sean Paul. If you don't know, my mom immigrated from Jamaica, so I think he's like kind of almost the embodiment of like what Jamaica's nation stands for. It's like one people, and he ethnically is, but then also he represents that in what Jamaica is. And I just like that, like every decade and every genre, he has a bop. Like he's working with Beyonce, but he's also like what's the one who wears like the bangs that cover her face?
Sia.
Yeah. But yeah, so like I like the fact that like, he is a person of color, a person of like a darker skin tone, who's always working in different genres and always is like bringing, especially when we're talking about cannabis, like there is most definitely an association with cannabis in Jamaica. I have lived in my life. People have asked me ignorant questions when they find out, like, oh, so do you live in a shack? Do you just like smoke all day? I'm like, no, sorry, I don't. But thank you. But he just like embodies like that kind of like the talent that can come from that kind of environment. But then also just kind of like he's had his different phases of being in and out of cannabis, and it's still just kind of like his art. His art is beautiful, and there's white people, Black people, Indian people, everyone who like loves him. And again, like in that sense of like when we're talking about cannabis and experimentation, like that's always what he's doing, which I say is collaborating with people of all different genres.
And yes, another thing about Sean Paul, he's loved worldwide. Okay, when he disappeared from the scene, random story. I was watching Love Island during quarantine, and he shows up and he starts performing for them, and I'm like, Sean Paul, this is where you've been. So extra points for Sean Paul for performing on Love Island 2020.
What's your favorite bop, like from like Missy Elliott? And like I love Missy Elliott. Like, you know what, now I am younger, but like what song is that? I mean, I think it's two songs where I know every single word, because that was like my like early 2000 childhood. Like my dad was playing Missy Elliott in the car, and I'm like dancing and like in a video, like on a TV screen or like flat screen, like early 2000, like like MTV, VH1, 106 Park, like that kind of thing. So, but what's you all's favorite like bop from like Sean Paul to Missy Elliott? And I don't think you went as far as like telling us who your favorite person is.
That's okay. I love all these people. Like, also Missy Elliott, one of my favorites. There's no good dance or party playlist without Missy Elliott. I put her on the playlist that went out on Friday, which is the song Where Are They From? She just brings the energy. I love her so much. I was going to pick Smino, who is like a newer artist. He's from St. Louis, but he's really intertwined with this like up-and-coming Zero Fatigue crowd from Chicago. And I just like, he is a vibe. Like his style is everything. He like really brings the fashion. I love his lyrics. He's like really like brings a different element to like rap and hip hop, which I really love. And he also is like really like works with this like newer like this introduction of heavy production into like all genres of music. People like Monty Booker and things like that, which I also think like really goes into this like wider popularization of using weed, because production like really hits you when you're high and you're feeling it. Those sounds like just like really touch your soul, and like he definitely works with like really talented producers to bring that energy, and just like a great live performer is. I think Jordan was talking about the importance of concerts earlier. Like his show was one of the best vibes I've ever encountered, and he had Earth Gang open for him, which you don't need the hype man, you just need Earth Gang. That's it. So good.
And Annetta and I have been to concerts together where the person is not giving. I'm not gonna say the artist's name, but she was not giving. She was like, "We should not. She who should not be named with her concert. She who should not be named. I'm not gonna lawsuit." She was not giving. She was me and Annetta and I were just in the concert and in the crowd like, honey, you know, I'm gonna need you to like you can't just be up there like doing this the whole time. I need you to like give us more. You're not giving. And so like that, so yeah, I definitely think that's a whole an entire thing. I think also, I know Kyra, you don't use cannabis products because it doesn't do much for you, but you are an artist and you have mentioned that like, you know, the music like hits different, like it's just like intertwines with you. But I think that it's, as far as like, you know, myself who's a cannabis user, Jordan and Annetta, and you all can tell you all perspective, but like I definitely, my favorite thing to do when I'm in that state is listen to music or watch a movie. But listen to music, just like the music, you hear things and you're just like, wow, this is just like brilliant. The song is just like so well produced. And like there are certain artists who I know are like good because I'm like, and it's certain stuff I listen to when I'm in that state, I'm just like, this is not that great. But like there are certain artists and certain songs, I'm like, this is so well produced and it's just so incredible. And I think that is the sign of a good artist. Like, and I mean like I appreciate that when I'm sober, but also when I'm on this other level, like that music hits me to my core, like straight in the middle of my body. I'm like, oh, I feel that beat, that bass, I feel it. So that's just kind of like my whole thing. But I'll answer my own question as far as Rihanna. My favorite album by Rihanna, not song, is Auntie. That was that album for me. Like that did it. I mean, I was I think a freshman in college or a senior in high school when it came out, actually 2015. And like when that came out, I was dating a guy who he was trash, y'all. Like la basura, like trash. But like anyway, and I'm gonna say what I say, he's trash, and for several reasons. But when that kind of, you know, was over and dissolved, that album I was cranking up, like screaming my window, like over that summer, like you need that, going hard. Like that album was just it for me. So that is like my personal favorite album by the artist I chose. So
I say mine is not an album, mine is like a song. Even this is a weird story of like one of my favorite ones. I remember like being younger and like dancing, like doing the dances, everything to it, like watching the girls and doing the dance was Temperature. And Sean Paul, like he wrote it. Okay, it's so weird though. He wrote it because at that time, you know, there is knife violence in Jamaica. A flow of the Commonwealth of the UK and the knife violence there. And so there was like a lot of knife violence that was going on in the city centers. And so he like made this song to like bring people together, but it's like the right temperature to shelter you from the storm. And it's like all these girls like just in puffer jackets, booty shorts, like just like shaking it on a winter set. And I was like, how does it correlate? But that's where his brain went. And that song was a bop from my childhood. I mean, I was too young to fully appreciate it, but I did. I didn't fully understand, but it's just like that's where his mind went, just like to have an anthem that you can stop fighting, like party together with. That's where his mind went, and that song did it.
I agree, absolutely. Temperature, like, whoo, that's a vibe. That just reminds me of a really good time in my life. But for my favorite albums, I did mention Super Duper Fly, iconic. Listen, Aaliyah's on it too. Like, she's a great one. But another album, I'm going to throw it back even more and go back to Stevie Wonder, The Secret Life of Plants. When I listened to this album high, I got a completely different experience than when I did when I was sober. Not a completely difference, but the nuances of that album really just stood out to me, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Like, So now I just consider that one of my top albums because like I bet if I listened to that on like, you know, on a record, I probably would have been transported back. But I don't know. It's just like that album is just all about plants and like Stevie Wonder, his voice. He's very nurturing for me, and he's like a really good memory for me because like that's what I was forced to clean to on Saturday mornings too. You know, that Earth, Wind and Fire and all the good one, all the time, you know. So you know how that goes. But yeah, I'll also throw in lately. I've been putting on old Catronata sets on YouTube, and wow, you know,
Yes.
like I know he's a little played out these days, but you go back in time and you go to his earlier sets and you won't be disappointed.
I love Catronata. I'm like sad that he just got into the mainstream, but is already like played out. Like, give that man his flowers. He is so talented. I love Catronata. I saw him live. Like, wow, what an artist! Absolute fave. Yeah. On that note, I think for me, like the music that I got really into when I first got into cannabis was like electronic music, like specifically that kind of, I don't know, this like genre that I feel like was created out of cannabis, like this lo-fi ambient kind of, that screams cannabis to me. Like Dope the Playlist, which also has like ties to cannabis, was I think like what put me on, honestly. Like just so good. There's so many artists, but yeah, I feel like Cape Trinata just love.
I spent a lot of my quarantine with him.
Yeah, he is literally. I heard him for the first time, Kitchenada, like 2 years ago. And what song? It was like, I wonder if you even notice me. It was like it was one of those songs, and like that beat, I was in the car at the time, we're just like, it's like bouncing, like just like my body was just bouncing to it. I'm like, this is like a beat, and like no matter what it is, a song that has like a beat is nothing. It needs to be a good beat. Obviously, the lyrics make it, but that beat has to be it. And like he has made some really good beats. Like I never say again, man, his flowers. Like he deserves them. And so like I like is asked one last question. Now like stop letting people alone. But so the last question I was just curious about is just so Kai, I know you don't actively use cannabis now, but obviously you have you've tried it, and so at least for the other two people in the room, and then like Kyra. What was the first song you listened to high?
It was Chicago by Sufjan Stevens. I was in the car with my sister. This was freshman year of my high school, like 2006 or 7. And I was with my sister and her friend. And we were listening to the song. And Sufjan Stevens, I don't know if you know him, but he's special and strange. And he has like a whole orchestra and like he's so extra. I love him. But that's the first song I listened to high, and I was like, and that's how I learned to like him, because I feel like if I were to listen to him sober just for the first time, I'd be like, who is this? It's cool, but it's a little strange. But like, like when you're just like vibing, you're like, oh, like what is this? And then yeah, so that's Sufjan for me.
Mine was, I believe it was from the B-Day album by Beyonce. It was Shakira and Beyonce.
I know that song because I got my parents to like buy that song for my ringtone.
Oh, girl, phone. Like the Dallas internet were playing that song on repeat in my dad's house. He was like so tired of us, so blasting it. He said like a scream singing that song. But I listened to that song. I was not high at 8, but I listened to that song when I was high. I listened to that song because it just came on my YouTube like when I was like listening to the playlist. It came on, and it was just like it had me feeling myself. I tell you, I was feeling myself. I was like, "Oh yes. Oh yes, ma'am." So that was my yes, ma'am, no girl. That was that song for me. So yeah, that's my song. When you say the name, I don't know what the name is.
Beautiful Liar.
Yes, that's it.
Because I remember also like in high school, like you like we and you do the Just Dance. I remember like loving doing that with my best friend, like because the dance was intricate on Just Dance. For me personally, like cannabis really does nothing to me. Really anything to me. I've never really been high, but I do know I am a practitioner of all the genres except for country. My mom's Jamaican. Jamaican people love country, and so it's just like it's turned me off. But I am a connoisseur of the K-pop before there was like the wave here. Okay, we're talking like true elementary school K-pop stan. But anyway, I would say mine's where I was like, no, trying it out was in TCU. It's called The Seventh Sense. When you're talking about a beat and a vibe, it's a beat and a vibe. If the music video is very like what you think if like you're thinking about cannabis, the lighting, the tone of everyone's voices, and even like the dancing, check it out. You'll enjoy it. It's not your stereotypical like BTS situation.
I think for me, I listen to like I know The Weeknd is not the same artist that he once was, like very pop king, that's fine, but I prefer the music from the beginning. And I listened to Kissland when I was high, and I was like, wait a freaking minute, wait. So I went and listened to the entire trilogy album, start to finish, like the whole thing. I was like, yes, this is how it was meant to be. So good. But I also liked, like I just think all the genres, like the Arctic Monkeys album that was like really popular when we were in high school, like 2012 time. That album sounds like even better. I like Mac Miller's Watching Movies with the Sound Off. I think that album like, I really like. And also the M83 album that was out in our high school, like when we were in high school. Those just hit different when you're like that outro song that's really famous. So I don't know.
I will say one thing about country. Casey Musgraves. So I'm not a country fan, but maybe Casey Musgraves is not country. Maybe she is pop. But like, you know, High Horse, like when I'm feeling just real, like, you know, whatever, I'm just like, oh, you ain't yo. And, you know, I don't listen to it often, but like, and I think that also, like, and that brings up a point, you know, we are all, and we'll kind of wrap it up soon, we're all like very diverse listeners to music, from Paramore to Arctic Monkeys to Snoop Dogg, you know, DMX. I grew up with even Adele. My dad is a big burly black man, and he was built in Adele when we were driving to Wisconsin. So, like, you know, that's just kind of how I grew up. And my mom, Fantasia. She go, ooh, Fantasia, boo. I'm gonna.
When my mom got that Fantasia CD, I was like, "Woman, take it out of your car, please, for a day."
We used to go road trips. Fantasia was on repeat. So I, at 8-year-old, 9-year-old Simone, Fantasia knew every single lyric. Like, who is this little girl? Like, she knows what Fantasia is. That was me. So I think that like that makes a good point. Like, and for me too. Like, I'm a big listener to alternative music. Like, I say alternative in scare quotes because it's not really alternative. It's just like people who are usually black. Alternative to me is a black person. So people who like are usually not like people who we think about. I'm trying to think about it. A good album. I'm thinking about a few more albums. Tell you all about Labyrinth, the Euphoria album for Labyrinth. That man is a genius. Like I played this for some, like I had a kindergarten class a while ago when I used to be a substitute teacher, and I played this like Labyrinth, like the orchestra like version, because the composition he won an award for it. It's so well done. Alt J is another favorite. Jamila Woods, and you know, the Strokes. The Strokes are pretty good, and they aren't popular right now, but like, you know, who else can I think of? There's so many people.
Glass Animal's first album, specifically the song "Gooey." You're gonna melt into your bed or seat or wherever you are.
Yes. So, and you have anybody you all like? Kali? Well, Kali. Yeah, I mean, he's hit or miss for me. I feel like Hozier. I like Hozier, and like also like kind of like my like people who I listen to. I'm just like, cause I fall in.
Hozier is coming out with new music like this summer, so
it's a vibe. We're good. We're ready. Yeah. So we talked about a lot, and we're so happy you all joined us. We will be having more videos. Stay tuned for our series on Guess Who Smokes. We'll be having doctors, lawyers, and moms, other people joining us to explain to us, like, guess who smokes. And so, you know, keep watching us. Please subscribe down below. We're so happy you all are here and joining us on this journey. And thank you. I'm Simone. This is Kyra, Annetta, and Jordan. We are the Merp team. And thank you for being here today.